Hello, hello. Welcome to What's Working Now. I am your host, Katie Richardson, and today we have an exceptional guest. And before I invite him to jump in here, I want to share with you a little bit about his bio. We're talking with Dr. JC, who is 17 years a practicing chiropractor. He has founded a humanitarian company, built an international health transformation company with coaching. He's a podcaster. He's got a book coming out, and he has the most incredible story. You're going to want to hear this because you're going to need to see what he can teach you. We're talking to the incredible, the amazing JC Dragon. What do you want me to call you? Welcome to the show.
Whatever feels comfortable. JC, Jean-Claude, Jean-Claude, which Americans call me very often, or the Dragon. Yeah.
All right. Dragon, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
Yeah.
I want you to share with our audience. I really feel like everybody has some sort of an experience in their life that has formed and shaped who they are today. And I want to hear for you what that has been for you. You're a man who's experienced a lot of things. And what has gotten you to this point?
It's such a fascinating question. And, part of me wants to give you the canned story, but I know that after getting to know you well, that's not what your listeners want to hear. So what's interesting about, first of all, saying what's working now, if you look at what's working now, which we'll get into, I'm always wondering, why is it working now as well? And a lot of that has to do with this, just like your story, because you were just such an amazing guest on my podcast, to just look at all these things that occurred at the time that happened to me, that now that I can say, here's what's working now, and give people advice. It's so apparent that along this road, I just identified so many things that weren't working, that pushed me to look for what is working now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I think what a lot of people like to know is, like, how does this guy walk around, calling himself a dragon? The first thing I would say about that is, why not? Why wouldn't anybody just have a little bit of fun in life and come up with a name that you feel represents a little bit of your story? So what's interesting about dragons is, if you really do some data and research on it, they actually never existed. I mean, like kimono dragons and stuff, but dragons were mythical creatures, fire-breathing dragons. So I call myself Dragon today in the what's working now phase of my life. What a fun concept to talk about what's working now.
Yeah.
Because if I go back to the beginning of my story, looking at who I am now would be the equivalent of looking at a mythical creature. So I chose a name.
Love this.
Yeah. So I'm just if you want to ever have a friend that is a dragon, now you know that dragons are real. So if I just, quickly go back, like so many people, I was messed up and now I'm blessed up, and I just came from a dark into the light, and it kind of all was connected to this massive breakthrough that I made. I would assume that anybody, I know you have some high performance and entrepreneurs and leaders that listen to this that are looking kind of for the next step, but I interview every one of them, and they had what I call a snap moment, where everything just came into focus and started their trajectory. For me, I was about 28 years old, and I was the most confident person that anybody had ever met, borderline cocky. I'm sure if anybody knew me back then and they're listening now, they're like, he was a little bit of an asshole, that guy. That's how confident I was. And it came 100% from insecurity and all that stuff. It was all an act.
Did you realize that at the time?
No, of course not. Yeah. You just drew out that version of me. I'm like, no way, but what was interesting at the time is, for whatever reason, I was using cockiness and confidence to cope with life, and it was working. I was very successful. I was top in my class, and I got the great job, and, confidence can take you a long way. So what happened to me, though, was just in the blink of an eye, I can only tell you that it happened within an hour. I was on a train going into New York City, and completely taken by surprise, I got afraid all of a sudden. Now, if anyone knows what it's like to be super confident and then not be, you know, that's like the wall that you never want to hit. So I can feel it now, you know, and that's why I always wear shirts that say embrace the suck. Like that was the first time that I felt the suck, and it sucked. So I didn't know how to cope with things like that. So what happened is it actually threw me into a spiral, and I think people can resonate with that.
What was the thought that had you thrust into this
Um,
chaos?
to be honest, if I really look back, thank you for taking me back to that scary moment. I think it had to do, and you know what's interesting? It's a great question, because I bet a lot of people are at that crossroads.
Yeah.
Here I am, everything's going right.
Yeah.
And in this moment, I think I questioned myself. I questioned my identity. I had just spent, 28 years of my life, and all of this time all in, like exhaustingly all in, after this career to be the world's greatest chiropractor. And that's a fun story. I mean, I became a very successful chiropractor, but in that moment, I questioned whether or not I had completely fucked it up and went the wrong direction.
Wow.
And that was the precipice of me losing my confidence. I questioned myself, and I didn't know how to. All my skill sets of like pretending everything was fine didn't work that day, and I just spiraled. So long story short, the next 3 months, I went from where I was into this deep, dark hole of depression, to the point where, I wanted to kill myself.
Wow.
Like just like just think of a name right now of somebody that is just like super, super confident and like nothing can stop them. And just imagine if that person just all of a sudden wanted to end their life. That was me. So remember I said the snap moment, this is the birth of the dragon. So my parents came to my aid, and thank God, like your husband, we have these angels that swoop in every now and then.
Yeah.
And those are real, right? Those are not mythical creatures. If you want to meet one, just call up Katie's husband. And my mom and people swooped in and took me to a therapist, which I thought was complete nonsense, but I was dying. I was hanging off of a cliff, and I was scratching.
Wow.
So I went and I had this 1 hour session with this lady, and she just started asking me questions. And what she did for me was she brought me back to this place where she identified, she says, how did this happen? And I said, on the train. And then she says, that's it? Was it the train's fault? And I said, well, she says, when? And I said, 3 months ago. What was that? It was July. And she started asking me questions, and no relevance. And she goes, what about your parents? And I go, oh, I haven't spoken to my dad in a long time, wah, wah. And my mom is in the car outside, but they're divorced. And then she goes, and she says, what's the significance of July? And I said, it's my birthday in July. She goes, oh, well, tell me about your birthday. This is like 20 minutes into this session where I'm dying, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she says, what's with your birthday? And I go, oh, I hate my birthday. I just started campaigning I hate my birthday. I don't like getting gifts. I prefer to give gifts. And I just started defending all this birthday stuff. And then all of a sudden she just made me in that moment. So here's the lesson for anybody that's lost right now. As quick as you can find yourself lost, you could spend 10 years lost, but it happens in a snap. The same thing can happen where you could be found in a snap. And what happened is all of a sudden she reminded me that I had forgotten for, 17 years, that when I was 11 years old, I walked in the house and my mom was there in her undies crying. And it was my birthday. So the first thing that I noticed is that's not normal that mom's in her undies crying, right?
Yeah.
My mom doesn't listen to podcasts, so we're going to get away with this. But the second thing is I noticed at 11 that my birthday was about to get bumped, because I said, Mom, what's wrong? And she says, your father's leaving us. And he wants a divorce, which I didn't even know what it meant. So, as kids do, I kind of licked my lip and in a nervous twitch. And I just said, I'm going to go play with my friends. So then I had to go explain to my friends, my birthday was off, bowling alleys closed, no more presents, all that stuff. So what I did that day is I shut off and I pushed it under the carpet and I started building coping mechanisms to become the asshole.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
in that moment,
To cope with the pain.
in that, who
Yeah.
knows, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we human beings are survivalists, right? We do everything we can. And, your story is such an inspiring one as well. So long story short, I didn't know I was doing all that stuff. So forgive me for I knew not what I did.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I completely regained my confidence because I realized that it wasn't my fault. And I pinpointed something and it all made sense. So I pulled 17 years of files in this brain in a second. And that's happens to us when we go, yeah, that makes sense. So everything made sense. And that was the day, and I was 28, that I decided to do three things. One, stop making everything about me, right? Two, I'm never going back to the dark side because that sucks. And anytime somebody's there, I'm love to help that person. And then the third is I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure that nobody else has to go through that. So I became a servant that day of others. So prior to that, this is a fun little thing that everybody can evaluate. If you draw two circles, one small, one big on a piece of paper, I want you to ask yourself which one is you right now. One of those circles is the creator, you, and the other is the creation. When I was in my unhealthy phase of life prior to this crash, the creator was the big circle, the creation was the small circle. So I flipped it and I started to, I'm getting the chills thinking about this. Everything became, and this reminds me of your story as well, everything became about serving others, serving the big guy in the sky and all that stuff. And it's just been such a wonderful experience because it helped me develop everything that I've created today. And that's where I'm at. That's what brought me to this place now, which is just nuts that, I have this life.
What's so beautiful about this story, JC, is these experiences that you had were such powerful internal experiences, right? It was changing your thinking. Like at the end of the day, that's what happened. You changed your thinking, new thoughts. And you even talked about how the confidence disappeared in that moment on the train and how it showed up again in that moment with the therapist. But I would wonder if it maybe was something new in the sense that previously you had this confidence that was kind of protecting the pain of the past, and you had confronted that pain and in a sense were healing it. And so when it came back, it had to have been new and different, was it not?
Very new and different, but more in a refreshing way. It's like, I believe that we have everything that we need. But we just see it the wrong way sometimes. So what happened in that moment with the snap, and it's probably very similar to the way a client succeeds working with you. As a guide, very often what you probably do is you expose something to them that was always there, but you do it in a very, very interesting way that they all of a sudden see it. So my biggest lesson in life, and one of the things that, I've created this whole system of helping people, create a more efficient and effective response system to life. And that's called the interface response system. That's a whole other thing we could talk about. But the first step is to radically just accept the fact that we're wired to perceive things in a certain way. We've all been programmed by our mother, father, teacher, preacher, and now society, right? And now we're going into the metaverse. So whenever something happens, it's important to understand why you feel and you think the way you do, even if it doesn't actually represent reality. So I like to bring, it's kind of a fun thing to do. It's like when somebody comes to you and says, I'm stuck, right? I want more. one of the fun things to ask them is like, are you sure about that? Or is that just how you feel and think right now? And by exposing that, it makes people just kind of go, And then all of a sudden, all bets are off, because you realize that whatever you think and feel might just be a programmed response, and it might not actually be real. So what I recognized that day is I'm actually in a lot more control of that stuff than I thought. If I go through a little bit of structure and access maybe a rational, logical part of my brain. So I like to help people with that. And it's deep, but I think everybody's like, he's kind of right.
I hope everybody's saying that, because I know I'm like, what you're sharing aligns for me and my experiences with life. And what you've done, JC, is you've taken this skill set of being an incredible chiropractor and you didn't abandon it. Excuse me. But in a sense, you evolved it and you brought this calling, this purpose that you have, right? This inner work that you did personally, and you brought it to your chiropractic work and helping people in their health. And you've now brought it into the world in a new and incredible way. So help people see how you have evolved since that incredible day when you were 28, and how you have taken everything that you've known and learned. You didn't abandon things, but you evolved them. Help us see what that looks like.
Well, this is really interesting, because this message goes out to anybody that has accomplished a lot, but is kind of feeling like, what's next right now. It's interesting, that word abandoned, because like, I don't think we ever abandon anything more. We look at it as, what did this prepare me for next? Right. So it's interesting, because I retired as a chiropractor 5 years ago, but why did I go into chiropractic practice? Well, I was seeking an identity and a purpose and significance. And I made a decision to serve others. So I went and I did that. And I got to a point with that. And that's a fun thing I mean, they know me as the heavy metal chiropractor. I took care of Anthrax and Iron Maiden and Motorhead and all this stuff. I took care of the Royal Prince of Abu Dhabi. And I took it to the Katie Richardson level, And then I started this worldwide humanitarian organization where I was in Haiti with Sean Penn doing all these, building the orphanages and tents. And it's like, everybody's like telling me that I'm so cool, but why am I doing all that stuff? Right. And why did I move on from all that stuff? It's because I was seeking, we're all seekers of the we all want to be happier, healthier, and wealthier. So I was really seeking identity and what am I supposed to do here? So I started to try things. And as soon as I felt like there was a limitation on how big I could serve, then I would evolve to the next level, which is where I'm at now in my polished state. And people probably look at me now and, I'm on stage in front of 15,000 people and I'm doing the podcast and all this stuff. And people might look at me and say, man, I want to be like that one day, but I'm probably about to move on to something else again. And that's one of the things I loved so much about your story, is like, you created this massive successful business and then moved on from it to serve at a bigger level. So, that's what it looks like, is, every day that goes by that I'm working on my physical, mental, and financial well-being and my service quotient, what I think I'm really doing is preparing myself for the next step, to look at something that I might look at now as like big and daunting and overwhelming, and get to the point with my current growth where I'm like, yeah, I can do that. So I think a lot of people might want to just self-reflect and become self-aware of the fact that maybe you're just practicing some things right now to prepare yourself to be you 2.0, and then once you get to you 2.0, you're going to get to the wall there, like Steve Jobs says, and poke the wall and see it's like moving. And then you can say, what's next? I think a lot of people out there that won't even entertain that idea will hold themselves back and rest in what we know as mediocrity.
Yeah.
And the greatest quote that I ever heard in life that makes people laugh, but it's true, is that if you continue to lick the lollipop of mediocrity, you will suck forever.
That does make me laugh. Oh man. Okay. So what are things that you are doing in your life to not live a mediocre life? What are some of those things you're intentionally going after or creating?
So what I'm doing, like the actual transactional structure of what I'm doing now is my wife and I, and everybody calls me Jack Dragon and she's Chicken. There's my wife's picture on the wall right there.
It's a chicken, by the way. It's a picture
It's
of
a
a chicken.
That's right. So for one thing, I want everybody to know that we have reached a level of financial freedom that we never thought we would ever have. And then we find ourselves living as minimalists at the same time.
Love
Right.
it.
So
Yeah.
the reason why we have minimized, we have nothing that doesn't matter, and we allow no one in our lives that doesn't support where this bus is going. That's what I mean by minimizing. We don't carry a lot of stuff because we travel a lot. She's from South Africa. I'm from France. We're adopting our little girl and she's coming soon.
Yeah.
So in any case, I just want everybody to understand that like that's our current reality. So we own an international coaching company that helps people physically, mentally, and financially transform their lives. All about meeting people where they're at. And we've been very successful at that. And we've trained thousands of coaches and certified coaches. So we run that and we make great money there. So that's kind of like a blessing. And we're feeling like we're making great change. But here I am, I start a podcast, right? And because I wake up every morning and I've got a lot of thoughts on my mind. So I started writing them down and journaling. But then I said, wait a second, if I write them down, I'm kind of explaining my thoughts on paper, but if I share them with others, I'll take ownership of these ideas. I'm going to start a podcast. So 2 years later, our podcast is highly successful and we've got all these people coming. So I'm going to write a book. So I'm going to write my whole life story and I'm going to teach this whole system of how people can access what is in their control, their response, and understand themselves and the fact that the poop is never going to go away. You're always going to have somebody put challenges in front of you. So what we need to do is learn how to react to that stuff. So that's what we do right now. But the secret is this, because you can get caught up in that stuff. You can get caught up in making wash basins for kids, or you can get caught up in your new coaching system. So what I really need to do is not get caught up in what I'm doing, rather than why I'm doing it, what's the end result I'm looking for, and be open to possibilities and potential. So one of the first things that I do in the morning, this is really, really fun exercise that anybody can do. Right away, when you wake up in the morning, you're going to move from unconscious to conscious. And that's when you call that opening your eyes. When you move from sleep to being awake, you're kind of groggy and you'd like to think that you can like say, no, but it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah.
Just as soon as your eyes wake up tomorrow morning, just say, thank you. Anybody can do that. Just say thank you. Even if you don't mean it, just say thank you. And after you say thank you, 3 seconds later, consciously say thank you about something. Now, I always roll over and give Chicken a kiss. I say, I'm breathing, my heart's beating, my kids are alive, all that stuff. And it's more of an enriched thank you. So that's the first thing. Now, here's the magic. And this is how I remain open. When I sit up, now I get up very early because I need my time. So I've been doing that for about 15 years, 4:30 in the morning. So I put my feet on the ground and you can't just think it. I look up and I say, how can I help? Now, what's interesting is, first of all, it puts you in a service mindset, but it also is followed by saying, I don't know. You don't get an answer. When you say, how can I help? Like, you'd like to think someone would be like, go to the cornfield and build a baseball field. You know,
right.
That's not what happens. You don't get an answer. So you get curious that day to see how you can help. And that leaves you open. So that my secret is that I remain what I call compassionately curious, meaning when I meet somebody like I did with you, just synchronistically, Katie's just sitting next. Imagine if you just show up in an event, you don't know anyone, and Katie Richardson sitting there, like you say hi, and you go, why is she sitting there? And what's her deal? And then you hear her story. And then that leads you somewhere else. So I think life is really meant to be lived and to be in a journey and be in service to other people. And other than that, like why do we get so caught up in little bits of minutia? It's because we think that it matters.
I love what you're sharing with us, JC. You're teaching people how to begin their day from a place of power, where they are going from that state of unconsciousness to consciously being in a state of gratitude and saying it out loud. And then looking up to their maker and extending that invitation of service. What can I do today?
Yeah. And you know what the maker says? He's kind of like, oh, you'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. Yeah. He likes to be very vague sometimes. Yeah. But by then moving into a place of being open and being curious, you do figure it out. You do discover it. And like, how influential has that been in where you are in your life today? What you just described to us.
I would say it's been huge. In my book, there's been some individuals that have come into my life that have caused a lot of pain for me, or at the time I thought they were happening to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to respond to them. So I went through a lot of pain in my life because I allowed my natural knee-jerk reaction that I was programmed to perceive and react, make me fly off the handle and spend a lot of time resenting and go, as we say, below the line of responsibility and be a victim and a villain or a hero or all that stuff. So I identified that was my challenge. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to I have a very, very structured system that I can teach anybody how to change the way you look at things, distance yourself from things, gain the actual like rational, logical part of your brain, and respond in cahoots with moving you forward. So that's helped me greatly because it's giving me the space, like Viktor Frankl talks about, there's a space between stimulus, whatever happens, and response. And that's where the win is. So I used to live in the response. Now I live in the space, and I teach everybody, and I did this at our talk, I teach everybody a little word that they can practice. So I like to give people stuff that they can do right away.
Keep going. Yeah.
Anytime something happens, we call those happenings. And I got that from, remember the What's Happening? The show, What's Happening? Did you ever see that?
No.
All right, you got to go see it. It's funny. Anyway, there was a show called What's Happening? What's happening? So whenever a happening happens, all you really need to do, it's called cognitive distancing. That's what the therapists call it, is distance yourself from it and pause and stall your reaction long enough to grant you permission to grab a logical, rational decision. Like I remember your perfect example here. We're going to bring your husband in here. When you tell your story and you went to that convention and nobody signed up, your programmed response responded, and you were like, wah. And what your husband did for you is he brought you into the space where you could grab onto another way of looking at it, and boom, here comes Katie Richardson. So it was a
new frame, just like you were saying, new frame.
So I'm going to give everybody a word that they can use that will save their lives and keep them on track and not get distracted. Sound good?
Love it.
Anytime something that you perceive as good, bad, helpful, or unhelpful, good, evil, whatever. You have to do this with everything. I just want you to learn how to go like this when it happens. Go, And it's spelt HMMM. And if you type it into your text, a little figure comes up with a hand like this.
Yeah.
Right? So by saying, what you're saying is interesting, not sure if it has anything to do with me. Am I in control of it? Is this more about you than me? Does it support forward motion of me and my children and my lives? Does it pay my bills or not? And in an instant, your brain is so powerful. If you just distance yourself for a millisecond, stop yourself and challenge it by saying, you will like dramatically increase the chances of making a logical, rational decision and not get off track and be able to identify this has nothing to do with me. So just imagine if your life could change just by saying, just like that. So try it, just like the eyes open and thank you. Try that in the morning and you'd be surprised at how highly functional you'll be if you just take a second to just ponder things rather than let your program response occur. So I teach that to people. It helps me deal with people because, when you're in flow, you know what it's like, science of flow. Everything's going right. We're having a wonderful day. Well, you have to be careful when you're in flow of flow burglars. Right. And we all have flow burglars in our lives. Right.
Sure.
And there are people that they wake up and their goal that day is to steal somebody's thunder. Helps you with them too. And that's it. All everybody needs to do is figure out what they want, make it so important that they'll do anything to get it and not let anybody get them off track.
So good. And this is a very conscious thing to be doing because what we're doing when we don't do that is an unconscious thing, which is what? We're attaching meaning, we're judging things, we're internalizing it in a non-powerful way, we're feeling sorry for ourselves, we're going down a path that our body and our physiology has been programmed, like you said, to go down. And what you literally gave us a step-by-step instructions on how to be curious. I love it. That's what you did. How to be curious. And when you open that door of curiosity, all of a sudden we're no longer caught in the victim story or the judging, the shame, the guilt, I should have done that, I shouldn't have done this, and he should have said this, right? You pulled us out of that by opening a door into curiosity and by simply making that sound.
Well, you might still be in those states. This is an important distinction. Just by saying, doesn't make you like all of a sudden just feel like, you might still think you don't deserve. You might still think that something's happening to you. You might still have anxiety, but what you're going to do is give yourself the opportunity to recognize it's just a feeling and it's a programmed feeling. And let's face it, Katie, you're a highly successful person and you are very, very focused, heart-driven, but you still wake up sometimes feeling crappy. And it's just a matter of how you put, what kind of value you put to it. It's, we all have voices in our heads. I call the voice the little liar because whenever I hear the voice, I can't stop hearing it, but I can say, thanks, but no thanks, right? So it's all about the response, but we're foolish to think that the dragons disappear. The monster in the closet, you can open the closet and not see it there, but as soon as you close the closet, you go, so it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to feel that you can't do things or feel confused, but it doesn't mean you can't do things. They're just feelings and thoughts.
I love that you gave that voice a name, the little liar. In doing that, well, one, you separate yourself from those thoughts and those stories and you label them more accurately. They're lies. They're totally lies that probably in the past you were believing. What are some things that you do to help you differentiate between that voice and the eternal, infinite JC?
That's a great question. And I think the easiest way to do it is because we live in a world now where we're not even really sure if this is all real. This could be the Matrix. This could be a simulation. And I'm very, very fascinated by that concept because it makes me take things a little less serious. But let's just assume that we're going to like think about like, how can I gain control of things like that? I think the key is that rather than thinking about what you can or can't do or what's possible, I think everybody needs to drop that, because whatever you think is possible is based on what you were taught yesterday till today. And if you learn how to, just like you used to as a kid, how old's your youngest kid, Katie?
She just turned 8.
Okay, so look in the eyes of an 8-year-old. Well, we're a little bit of an unfair advantage that they're being raised by the Richardsons, but look in the eyes of an 8-year-old and look at the eyes of somebody that doesn't not yet know what can't happen. Mm-hmm. Right? We were all there. But then through life, we started being taught from our father, teacher, preacher, what's not possible. Mm-hmm. So all you have to do to go back to the 8-year-old or even younger with those big eyes is just start focusing on what you want. Now, when you focus on what you want and you don't put any restrictions, you just have to say, if Aladdin comes out of a lamp, what do I want? And if you allow yourself to go there, music helps. That's what I loved about the Final Percent event, is they played music, which makes us dream future. But if you allow yourself to go into the future and actually entertain a future reality, well, then maybe you can create value on that. And then the idea is that if you have something you want bad enough and that's important enough to you, well, then you won't listen to the little liar. You'll do anything it takes. Here's an example. Yeah. When you hear Katie talk about her kids, you hear a different version of Katie. Like to get the level of success that you've had, Katie, because I interviewed you, you probably did that at 80% of your capacity, maybe even less. But when it comes to your kids, that's when Mama Bear comes out. So I like to give people this example of showing them how powerful they are and how excuses don't matter. If I was to take your head and push it underwater, what is it that you desire most?
Air.
Right. Like how bad?
I would give everything.
What if like the timing is wrong? What if you don't believe in yourself that day? And like, what if it's like holiday season and you're, no, it's like when something is as important as air to you. Yeah. That's why we say when I started to attach what I was doing with my financial goals to my kids, who I would die for, I started to realize I will die to get this happen. Right? So everybody can do that. Everybody can do that. So when you have something that you want, I call it your North Star. When you have,
as do I.
Yeah, of course you do. So when we're lost, you look up, you find your North Star and you get back on track. When you create your North Star and it shines so bright that you go like this when you talk about it, right? Yeah. All that stuff is still there. And the suggestions of the flow burglars and the naysayers and the little liar, they never go away, but they start to realize that they don't apply in the future. So you start realizing all this stuff that you think about yourself, that you can't do this, can't do that, that doesn't apply in the future. So you start to not give it as much value. And that's the secret. That's the secret. So in goal setting, and I know you do a great job of this, is giving them that future vision. You can't just say, I want this. We have to get to a point where wants become needs, and then we go to the next level and they become musts. When something is a must, Mama Bear comes out, the sleeping giant wakes up, and anything is possible, right? Yeah.
JC, what I'm consistently hearing you acknowledge as you share both your experience and then what you teach other people to do, what you're acknowledging is the reality that we make these internal changes and focus on gratitude and show up being curious and all of those things. And it's not like your reality changes, right? Life is there's still difficulty out there. There's still monsters trying to pull you down, but you now have the power to overcome those things, right? You have changed. And as you show up in your life in this way, you then can go and impact your reality, and reality starts to change. The monsters are still there, but your life and your reality begins to reflect the change that you have made internally. And you are living this, my friend. You are living this day in, day out, every morning, making that choice to express gratitude, to show up open, to be curious, and to continue to serve and help others through a modality that allows you to be present with your incredible wife and to be there with your kids and continue to help and serve and grow. Yeah, you're living it. I love it. So beautiful. I want everyone to know that, because I think it's so important when you are somebody like you are, who's a leader in this world, who's a podcaster, who's a coach, who's a CEO, an entrepreneur, a father, a husband, that it's one thing to be able to share these things because, you read it and it made sense. And it's totally different to be able to share these things because you have lived it and it now lives in you. And that's what you're illustrating for us. Is it's a knowing for you because you have made the changes in your life and you live it, which then gives you the authority to teach it.
That's one of the things I resonated with you in hearing your story. In light of what you just said, there's a big difference. I mean, you can look at sales and service, right? Selling, if you're selling, you're telling people what they should do. And then a much, much more clean version would be serving, when you say, how can I help you? Right. Mm-hmm. But when you've gone through an experience and you've committed to living it, which is not easy, by the way, getting up at 4:30 and reading and exercising and doing all that stuff, it's easier, but not easy. Right. But I'm living it and it's working and I'm working it. I'm not selling that or serving it. I'm paying it forward. And that's one of the things I align with you is I know that we have this ability to understand who we're talking to. I call that autonomy supportive coaching, where we meet them where they're at, but we're empathetic and saying, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not going to try to fix you right now, but I just want you to know, I just heard that. And in my own way, I feel it. And then the hero starts to pop up and we go, oh, I can't wait to help this person. But you got to slow down and say, but it's like you start to realize all I need to do is share what it is that I know is working for me and other people with this person, and they'll be blessed. The biggest challenge that I face, which I'm getting better and better and better at, is being able to know where their starting point is, because I could vomit all this stuff on everybody. In fact, there's some people listening to this podcast right now that are like cleaning vomit off themselves. But there's also some people that were perfectly ready and poised to hear it. And those people can change the world, So I love the idea of myself practicing listening and learning, so that I can phase place myself in that person's life because I've experienced it and guide them from there. That's the secret to good coaching. And that's something I know you're a master at.
Yeah. I know the audience knows this, but I want to reiterate that I'm very intentional about who I bring onto this podcast and who I have conversations with. And it's consistently people who are living in integrity, who are living their values, and who are practicing what they preach, right? And you are an embodiment of that, JC. So I want to thank you for sharing all of your experiences, helping people to connect the dots, even giving step-by-step instructions on how to begin to live this way inside their life right now, today. And thank you for sharing that. I have a few rapid fire questions for you. And you've shared some of this. What's something that you do consistently every day?
So obviously I have my morning routine. I control my consumption. So, and that's what I eat, what I drink. I'm very, very, very much filtering what I consume. We don't watch TV. And I know that everybody has their own opinion about that, only because we want to control what's programming our mind. And then the other thing is I very, very much take exercise seriously. It doesn't have to be intense, but I like to, vivify my body and jumpstart it so that I get to control how I see the world. So that's something that I do every day. I want. Oh, and I also make sure that when I fill my schedule up and my mind, I always make sure I start not with my goals of business and serving others. I always start with my family. You know, that's the first thing. Chicken, our daughter. I just make sure they're all accounted for and loved, and that's my strength. So I begin there. I do that every day.
So good. So good. Is there a book that you keep on your nightstand that you frequently open and revisit?
Well, so books, very interesting question to ask the dragon. So I don't know if you know who Jim Quick is.
I do.
So
Yeah.
Jim Quick's one of my very good friends. I've known him for 20 years. I was his chiropractor. He's my neighbor. So I learned how to speed read a long time ago. So I read about a book a week, thanks to Jim. I got to give him props because his speed reading is like epic.
Yeah.
And he would be smiling right now and probably going like this. But so I don't have a book by my nightstand. I read about a book a week. So I will share right now I'm reading, The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene, which is like one of the best books ever. But I'd say if I thought about the best book that I've ever read, which is like a loaded question when you're reading 50
Sure.
plus books, there's Think and Grow Rich. God, I don't know. I don't know how I could say
Is there
that.
one that you gift frequently?
I love the book, The Art of War, not The War of Art.
Oh, yeah.
Now
Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah. So The War of Art is Lao Tzu. And you
Yeah.
might fall asleep with that. The Art of War is massive. That's a great, great book. And the reason why I love that is it just really, really shifts your brain. Oh, here's another one. This is for somebody. I love this. We should have a whole talk about books someday. Another great book. If anybody is out there noticing that you're going on a run and then something happens and you don't follow through, like you get good, but not good enough, right? The book for you is called The Big Leap. Have you ever read it?
No.
Katie, this is
Has
my
it got
gift.
2 fishes on the front?
It's got a fish going in the fishbowl.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
a
I
book.
have.
It's book by a guy named Gay Hendricks, and it will just explode your minds and teach you how to give yourself a raise in life, and you will level up big time. That book, that's a gift right there. The
Yeah.
Big Leap.
Great book.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. What has been some advice that you've been given in your life that's really helped you?
Okay, this is good. When I was doing humanitarian work, I was in a phase of my life where I was a proclaimed selfless person. So I got in this mode where I was doing things for others and it had nothing to do with me. So I was at a bar one night with this like big time speaker. And he was like, like this big shot. And he was asking me, he goes, "Why do you do this?" And I said, "Oh, it's for the people. Like, he goes, "But what do you get out of it?" And I go, "It has nothing to do with me." And then he says to me, he goes, "Bullshit." So what he taught me that day is that human beings don't think, say, or do anything without them having value. So we've been taught since we were children that selfish is a bad word. And I know why, but here's the thing. You have to understand the laws of give and receive, right? If you're a giver and you have no one to receive, you have nothing to give, right? So one of the biggest breakthroughs that I ever made in my life was to accept what I get out of things. I mean, if I go to church and I claim that I want to serve God, you could say, "Well, why do you do that?" I'm like, "Well, because it's about God, but how does it make you feel?" "Good." And then you could say, "You selfish bastard." Right? So that's a big, big thing, because I think we all are afraid of receiving, and we don't know it, but we unconsciously stifle it. So I just think it's really, really important to just be okay with the receiving. And when you open up to receiving, guess what? You just granted somebody the giving.
JC, that's so true. Like, we are taught so much to give, and we're not taught or instructed on how to receive. I remember as a young girl, if I ever got a compliment on anything, I would ignore it. I didn't know how to let that in. And what a tragedy, right? To not experience joy and or receive of anything that somebody's trying to genuinely give to you. Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to learn when somebody gives you a compliment to say, hey, thanks. You know,
Right.
sometimes
Seriously.
my female coaches, I'll say, hey, your hair looks great. And they'll be like, oh, I just showered, rather than just saying thank
Right.
you.
They
So
don't
that's
let it
that's a
in.
big step.
Yeah, that's huge. Fantastic. JC, this has been an absolutely incredible hour. I could talk to you for 3 more. Thank you so much for being on the show. And to everybody who's listening, take action on what he has taught you. What's the one thing that you're hearing for you? And how can you now take that and put it into action so that you can not just have this insight, but it actually begins to impact your life and come into your reality through your action? That's my invitation to you. JC, thank you so much. And for everybody who's listening, this is What's Working Now.